Good afternoon. It's high noon now. And at the beginning I want to apologize for my sneezing nose and my coughing because I'm not feeling quite nice to provide the total presentation at the time that I was planning. So let's try to prepare one and to explain one presentation about the challenges in leadership in higher education at the case study of our university, the University of Tourism and Management in Skopje, Republic of Macedonia. From the beginning of the childhood, every people can consider that there are different situations in which some people are dominating over the others. That's called the leadership, and that's what we try to explain in our presentation through the leadership in higher education. The people are joining in groups to fulfill their tasks, their proposals that can be done by himself, like a person, and but they can provide and fulfill them together in a group. In contemporary terms of being and doing business and including the education, the changes that are fulfilling in the environment with high speed, extraordinary speed, is necessary to have quite active and propulsive leadership. That means that we can define or determine the transformational leadership as a leadership style that is defined, the leadership that creates qualitative and positive change at the followers, style that is devoted to the ethics of the leader and the commitment of the followers within the higher levels of needs, motivations, and values. Let's pass through the situation of on the area of higher education in our country. We have two separate parts in higher education. That means that there are existing in actual conditions state higher educational institution and private owned higher education institution. Our University of Tourism and Management is at the sector of private higher education, and we include 5 areas. Area of economy, area of tourism, area of management, and area of management of human resource management, and area of marketing management. Except that we are planning to extend our activities at the area of juridical sphere or juridical sector. We try, as other countries, to implement the Bologna Convention of European Credit Transfer System since the beginning of 1999. But there are different types of implementation. Usually in our country, in Macedonia, state higher education institutions are at the opposite side of the idea and the processes of implementation of this European Credit Transfer System. At our case, at the case of University of Tourism and Management, we are strictly on the on the way of straight implementation of this Bologna Declaration from 1999, and we are trying through total organizational synergy and total implementation of leadership of our rector at the area of necessity and step-by-step implementation of this Bologna system. So, University of Tourism and Management in one area is the agent of change. On the other area is necessary to exercise all the activities on synergy of teamwork, because we think in our university that it's not possible to accomplish all the activities on implementation if we are doing these activities alone or in separate groups. There are necessity to provide teamwork through synergy and implementation of group preparation of the decision of taking and acting in some areas of higher education in our university. We have a few progressive professors at a previous period because we are quite young institution. We are only 8 years old. And we start with implementation at 1997. We were under coverage and under tutorship, as we can say, of the University of Rijeka through the Faculty of Management in Tourism and Hospitality Management. And we use and test all the activities at step-by-step model with the total help or implementation, the system that was implemented before in Croatia. So we implement the total activities to one big professor, quite nice, quite experienced professor. That's Professor Dr. Zoran Ivanovic. And our leader, our agent of change is our rector, Professor Dr. Asemenian. At our university, implementing this process, we profiled the required leadership skills through these several points or statements. The first one, or the second one, is the courage. That means the transformation leaders take up suitable position, risk, and face the reality. The other one is transformation leaders stimulate and successfully implement changes. The third one is openness and trust in the followers. That means the transformation leaders are open, honest, and trustworthy. What means trustworthy? It has to be trustworthy because they have to have followers, even they are on higher level of in education area or on the lower level in education area. Then it or he has to be led by values. That means that the transformation leaders demonstrate behavior that is in coordination with the values. We have different values, as my previous colleague say, as I remember, that different values are at different period of science or different period of area of science. For example, mathematics and literature, as you explained before. So at that area, I can see, or we can see at our university, the values of leaded by values. Then a lifelong learning that is necessary. We are all consistent in this sphere. That means that we use the experience in the future and are prepared for changes through trainings, through long life learning, etc. And then ability to meet complex, uncertain, and precarious situations. That means he has to be a nice, predictable leader. That's not some prediction or statement that was done in old Delphi through that PTA, you know, some wish, etc. But it has to be prepared for changes and to provide the result of changes and the influence of environmental activities from other in this area higher education institutions, private-owned and state-owned institutions, and the leadership skill that is maybe the last one, but maybe the most important is they have to or he have to have visionary skills. Visionary skills are the main, under my opinion, and under our opinion with my colleague Professor Jana Ilio that is here with us. They have to have the possibility to visionate the future, to create the future, not to be with the future, to visionate and to create the future. For the conclusion, and I'm also happy that I'm on time, we provide for our university to be a leader not the university, and also our rector, Professor Dr. Racen Milenkovski, and we are together with the changes in our new law for higher education. We practically have used and have accomplished all the necessity changes in our law that are now in process of consideration through the system of juridical positioning in our assembly. And about the quality of leadership, we have a lot of awards that are prepared and that we award in previous few years. That means that we have the situation, and we have the awards for total quality management. That is the first one from the left side, done in Switzerland. After that, we award super brands. We are super brands. The only one, the only higher education institution in Macedonia that is in super brands from our country. Maybe abroad there are a few of them or a lot of them, but in our country we are the only one higher education institution that award this. And then 2 weeks ago, we award also the European Award for Quality in Higher Education. That was in Istanbul. For example, that was like Turkish Airlines. We award, Turkish Airlines was awarded for business, we are for higher education, and we are very proud of that. And for the end of the ends, conclusion is that transformational leadership is the key to successful management of the organizational transformation changes. I think that's enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate both input. First, I'll start with Pierre-Antoine. Of all he said, which I agree, seems to me that nowadays it's even more dramatic and expanded the consciousness of things that actually are not new. Dewey, the philosopher and pedagogist, 1800, said that the problem with school is that there are too many teachers and very few facilitators of learning. I say this because my question to you two is, how come if we know this thing, and even, famous Roman Empire, Einstein said that all the right things, how come the opposite has been done, and exception, congratulations, but they still don't do it? I have my answer for that, a sociological one. So the point is a process, not knowledge, but process of learning, active learning. And so more than anything, an image comes from my mind. What about a PhD in learning how to learn? Learning through experience. And so the important thing for measurement of who's admitted, grades, IQ, or emotional and social intelligence, maybe even ethical intelligence, as we were saying in another session. Then you said a very interesting thing, education to love. Yes, I said that, but that to be taking place in school or even at the university is way too late. If we want, and we should want to promote education to love, we should start in facilitating family that are loving family. Because you're not going to learn to love in books. But you're going to learn to love in your own heart because you receive from your family, as Bogdan answered beautifully. I was loved by my mother. I was filled with love, so it was easy. I took pleasure in sharing my panino with all my poor. It hit me in my heart, because it's only true if you feel it. You cannot give somebody something if you don't have it. So we have parents training assistant to have, the incubator for future citizens to be loving and healthy, bringing the potential of the kids' resilience. And then, who teaches the teachers? We need to revise totally our teacher training programs, because how they're going to be able, the teachers. And we have a lot. But these things, actually, I remember in the 70s, with Carl Rogers, we took a whole school of medicine. We were founded by the Robert Johnson Foundation, and we were having this program, Human Dimension in Medical Education. We were taking the whole medical school, from the director to the janitors, and having, encounter groups that lasted even 5 days and on an ongoing basis. But there is a mountain of research on how to develop active learning, help people help. In the States, David Asker and Robach, you just go to Google, it's full of research, and it proves it's possible, it's real, and it's less expensive. Why then is not done more? I think that the issue is power, the management of power, because all these things require a power revolution. And coming to your presentation, very interesting, Professor Saso Zakharov, you can misspell my name. You call me Professor Zucchini. Anyhow, very interesting. And also, I was hit by what you said, ethical leaders, transformational leadership, building trust, absolutely yes. But to do what you said, and so I would be interested to know how you manage it, this is not a small feat to accomplish. I think that the university should walk their talk. Everybody that teaches a university, my experience is not just in Italy, that is a particularly tragic situation. By the way, the Bologna system, mechanistically applied, is a big failure. It flunked in its intention to bring equality. But, and this everybody says it in the university, while we continue to do something that we know is inefficient. But what about walking the talk? What I'm talking about? The selection of professors. Who teaches what? Who has the power to choose his subject matter, no competency. And now, if you read the Italian newspaper, it's full of, we know the people that are going to win that chair before the exam to elect that professor, right? Because it's a power struggle. And also, how many research are falsified? Let's not pretend that we live in a pink ideal world. Actually, if university needs to take care of their own problems and actually realize that they are already dinosaurs. The university, how the knowledge is created and passed is actually part of the problem. That's why I think we badly need a new paradigm in education. And that's why many of us are involved in this tremendous effort that cannot be done, certainly not any of us knows what the new paradigm should be. We know the problem of the old paradigm, top down, and always follow the power. It's going to explain a lot if we're going to go into the sociology of knowledge. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Okay. Here, and actually also resonating to comments that Umberto made. By the way, I may be the guilty one that had my doctoral thesis on learning, because it's actually published in French. It's Éducation de dirigeants, les aspects méthodologiques, the management education methodological aspects. So taxonomy of learning, knowledge skills, knowledge ethical skills, and then what is the learning process. Therefore, choose the method or the function of the learning process rather than starting, for example, with case study method of the Harvard Business School does. Anyway, but it stimulated me here to thinking about actually we are trying to do here, and even with university consortium. So let me just come up with some test, maybe some ideas. Maybe we should not be giving lectures at all. Maybe we should be asking questions.
Yes, like this.
I beg pardon?
Right now.
Right now. Maybe we should just, and perhaps encourage people to form groups and then search for answers. They can search on the internet, they can search by reading books, etc. And then I would say add another step, that in groups first, but they will be actually learning in groups, searching for answers is always prepare them to function in teams rather than competition with each other. And secondly, then another point to it, maybe search for a tutor, of their choice. Like, then go to, if you like, the Oxford uniqueness method. They're given no lectures, essentially, and so many books to read, and then you have this privilege of discussing with your tutor. So, and after that, you see, they would continue to do what they feel the passion for, as you mentioned, and, where their heart and their mind is. Well, so I wanted to raise that, by way of reflection, if you could move to that. And maybe just one thing, and I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
Saso
Milianowski is enough, but people like to call me Bogdan because they don't know how to pronounce my name. Well, the dominant economic system now, it is perverse capitalism. In what sense it is perverse? It's totally perverse in the sense that a human being has no value in that system. So, as one of the products of that perversion, and I'm sorry if I kind of attack so directly, is this expression, human resources, which is utterly inhuman. But the expression actually, in a sense, encourages companies to deal with people's resources. And they deal with it actually with less care, and certainly with no love, but with less care than they care about their financial resources, or they say physical resources like equipment, etc. Just one quick illustration. I had once 35 presidents of companies among the 100 top companies, and the question was sharing experience on how did they actually act to a little crisis. There was in 81, we had that session in 82. And they started the first one, well, we managed to fire 3,000 people. The next one said, well, and we shed 5,000 people. By the time it got to the 5th, they said it was 12,000 people, but how were they saying it? It is not what they were saying. They're almost beating themselves in the chest. It was like a macho game. Who did better? Who fired more people? I got so mad, I said, stop it. At the risk of losing actually the whole institution, because we had 50% of the participants, we had, funds for doing research, etc., from these companies, essentially. Say, stop, cool off, go for half an hour, and think about it. How many lives did you ruin in the process? How many families you have destroyed in the process, etc.? Well, I won't concern it, so it just maybe with all the good things that they're doing, maybe you could change that term and don't teach human resources. Call it something else in the long term management resources.
Maybe you have the opportunity to speak.
I'm thinking about when the education of the leader starts. We think very often that it might be at the level when young people go to university or when they enter into professional world. In the same time, I'm thinking that it's the first people who influence somebody to become a leader are parents. They or contribute to development of the natural abilities of children, or they block them. And especially, I think we need to pay attention to teenage years when children learn independence, when they learn how to take the responsibility for their own years. And we run a school. It's called Change Makers Leadership School for Teenagers. What we noticed is, talking about love, that children which have good family situation, they sometimes have even their parents' support when they involved in some projects which would bring society some good results. But the children which do not have parents and they don't have their support, they are very much acting out of fear, out of sometimes a lot of confusion. And I think one thing we should address is how we should encourage parents to take seriously the natural abilities of children, because that's where they learn how far they can go in their life. And one thing is also I'm thinking about people who never have experienced love, genuine love. It's very difficult for them to love. Many times we know that if they didn't have a healthy, loving environment, it will be difficult for them to become healthy leaders, because they will look somehow in their positions to fulfill some of their needs. So, and that's another challenge. How can we create an environment for these kids who had difficult background still to have opportunity to learn how to become leaders? So these are some of the challenges I would suggest.
Andreas?
You have the word shareholder, you have the word shareholder, and you have the word stakeholder. And you were mentioning the word care, and I was Googling careholder. And guess what? There's a company with that name, the Careholder Company in Germany. What wonderful, careholder instead of stakeholder. Because, and then the second point, when you were talking about not having lectures, but having questions and groups, there's a wonderful system for that. It's World Cafe. It's initiated by Juanita Brown in the United States, and it's unbelievable, well thought of. And I participated, for instance, in a conference in Budapest of the Society of Organization Learning, SOLO, of Peter Zengi. And we had 500 people in the room, and wonderful in groups of 3-4 and designing and sketching and making wonderful. It's like arms in a fabric. Wonderful, co-creative, facilitative, and at the end the ideas were spreading like water, like wells, instead of looking at boring PowerPoints.
Lisa wanted to raise a question?
Yes, it's more of a comment. I recognize myself since I'm still a student, so it all talks to me well. I think, however, that finding the balance between body, mind, and soul, as sharpening the mind, should come only from individual himself. You cannot force someone to want to improve himself. I mean, let's acknowledge that the first function, the basic function of the university is really to provide knowledge, you cannot train a doctor or a lawyer just by learning them how to love and how to feel and how to be compassionate. You still have to have this first base and the first ground of the basic knowledge. And also, I think what universities should more do is to develop this critique, the critical thinking skills for a student and for a person to be able to recognize what is good, what is bad, and to be able really to judge different situations. And the last comment is that we cannot train leaders in schools. I mean, you know how to become leader on a field. You can train sailors to anticipate the storms, all the disasters, but it's only once when you are in an open sea that you just deal with the situation itself. You cannot anticipate all of the lessons for leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to leverage your last comment. I think it's all about the context, the real life context. Maybe the future university will actually provide the space for students to interact with stakeholders of the common topic. If I take tourism as an example, would it be possible to think that the learning comes from looking on the internet about all the information, having a facilitator on one side, which is the theoretical side, the learning intellectual side, and then the practical life side is interacting on a concrete real life project with the stakeholders of the ecosystem of tourism, and that might be very complex, but this is part of the whole training. Addressing complexity in real life, you cannot address complexity in a room. And this is one of those challenges that the systemic thinking is bringing over. It's a different culture, a different way to interact, and a different way to train people on site in real life examples. And ecosystem thinking is what it's all about. And I'm sure tourism is a challenge to think from an ecosystemic perspective. But the young people, the Generation Y, is actually wired from a brain perspective, from a consciousness perspective, and maybe even from a spiritual perspective to actually address it much better than the older brains of the dinosaurs. And there we talk about the reptilian brain, which is one of our brains, which is more or less advanced. And I think that's maybe a question to you, Sasha, is how do you envision the future of being a part of co-creating, co-building the future of tourism, leveraging the university as a setting to do it? How would you do it?
Thank you very much. I also have a question from the internet, and I will give you the word afterward.
Just, I didn't understand that there's an excellent saying. Good prayer is not spoiled by repetition. And I'm just repeating these words on many occasions, which comes linked to education, because I think that this is a very important issue. Actually, today's education is focused on on creation of specialists, experts in the field. I was lucky to know Sakharov at some point, and we met, and once he said a wonderful thing. He said that being an expert in the field, even the top expert, does not guarantee a human being from idiots. And the only thing that guarantees from idiocy is the really broad humanistic education. And from that perspective, my sort of point of view that any kind of education, even in physics and mathematics and biology and other sciences, should be preceded by a course of humanities, a course that gives a broader vision of the world, to avoid this specialist, let me say, fate of the specialists. And at the same time, I would also suggest, I've also mentioned that every time, music. Music is not aesthetics. Music, if, let me say, we are using here forms which are sort of excessively materialistic, like pure, like energy, like all these things, but I will use it as well. If you have a poorly formatted hard disk, it's not the matter of how a good computer you will have. It will not work. Therefore, the hard disk or our conscience, our mind formatting is also done by music. Many people underestimate that. But only one example. 80% of Nobel laureates in physics, in other sciences, were proficient in playing instruments, almost professional. That's all I wanted to say.
This is the very last question.
Really well. I was once told that if you went to Oxford, you knew everything about nothing. If you went to Cambridge, you knew nothing about everything. Of course, those are some of the challenges that, in fact, we do confront. We haven't mentioned the techniques of teaching particularly, but of course we have numerous options: lecture, Socratic, problem-oriented, tutorial. I'm sure there are others. And each of these has strengths and weaknesses. Bodan mentioned the strengths of the tutorial system, but God help you if you have a lousy tutor. If he doesn't know anything, you're going to get out of there knowing nothing. That's just on the other hand, if you have a brilliant tutor, you're lucky. I suspect that there is a truth in Dewey, whom Alberta mentioned, that fundamental to all education is the ability to transmit the skills of problem solving. That in the very earliest years, a child learns to solve a problem. He needs to realize that if he puts it in his pants, it's unpleasant. If he learns to go to the toilet, he's learned something. He solves a problem, you know. And I suspect that the notion of problem orientation is certainly something that implicates all of education. But then problem solving touches on something else which we've not mentioned, and that is, even though we receive our system of identity from the family and the village and the community and so on, the system of identity is not static. It can reduce itself, as Ivo implied earlier, where a person comes out as a narrow, bigoted, racist, prejudice-oriented person, and the other guy comes out of the same experience with a holistic, humanistic view, sense of the brotherhood of all of mankind, and so on. But I don't know how far consciously we see whatever technique of education we use as a way of strengthening a healthy identification and avoiding a negative one. I myself tried to put human rights into the Florida schools, and I never got a straight answer, but what I did get was universal disapproval.
Thank you very much for your comments and questions.
There is one additional from Shrita. I hope I pronounced your first name well, in India. Leaders play a very important role in changing the present and future. Why can't there be schools shaping children from a very young age to become leaders, a study or learning concentrated to this effect? Why cannot we make leaders like Winston Churchill? I believe there is a relationship with how elites people were trained at the very beginning in the Roman Empire, with the Greeks, the Egyptian, etc. And even closer in times with Montaigne. There is no such thing as a university to train elites. This is absolutely evident. There is a mix of tutorial, problem solving, walking in nature. We can also think of Rousseau. I mean, there are lots of things that bring up elite training. But also I believe that we cannot afford to only have elites that is trained in the humanities, that is trained in the with holistic thinking. I truly believe we need higher quality of care within a population. We cannot afford to only train the well-born, if you allow me this expression. I just want to answer or add my proposition to one of your comments, and I will give the speak to you maybe to conclude, about critical thinking. Yes, of course, that's absolutely obvious, but for me it requires the space and confidence to say no. And I can tell you, within corporation and company, there are very few people who dare to say no to their boss. And I've never, I always had this pleasure to open my mouth. Sometimes it cost me a lot, but I will never regret. I enjoy critical thinking in a positive way. Sharpening the mind, and of course, it is dangerous if it is done by a teacher. I mean, when every time we look at how the brain functions, inception of an idea is very critical. My point is nevertheless to introduce psychology, understanding that a mind exists, and that depending on the belief system, there is a reality that I will accept or not. So accepting my mind and make me understand that my preferences, what I love, what I like, what I dislike, are a consequence of a belief system. And this at least should be taught. Understanding the techniques, the science of the mind. Whereas the own work, the work on each of us minds, I agree with you, shall be done at a personal level. Then there was this question about when does the leaders, how to train leaders and when does it start? You mentioned teenage. I could mention early childhood, and medical study proves that even before the baby is born, there is interaction within the mother. He senses, he hears, etc. So, and the father, yeah. So I mean, this is a life learning process, and I believe for those who have not experienced love, because I feel it's a very important question. I also have seen resilience, and I also have seen in my life that people who are born in very wealthy family and who have been capable of having great education, everything's perfect. They are sometimes very conventional. But people who have suffered from scarcity and have developed values are sometimes a million times more creative. And probably, I'm not saying we need people who have experienced scarcity. I mean, suffering is suffering. But I will never say that because we have experienced suffering in our early childhood, we are dead for the society. I probably think it's the opposite. Those who have suffered and found in themselves the solution to overcome suffering are probably much more needed. So maybe you wish to add something as a psychologist, and if not, you have the speech to close the discussion.
I'll try to speak a little, and then I'll give the chair to Professor Zucchini. Oh, Zucchini, sorry. Okay, thank you. It was very interesting to hear different opinions about these two presentations, I mean, from my colleague Pierre Antoine and from myself. And I can make some conclusions about the questions that was done before. As I understand from Professor Bogdan, we need to have parental or family managerial ethics, to manage the family ethics. The parents have to manage the ethics. I think that managerial ethics in the companies doesn't exist. From one side in the companies there are shareholders or stakeholders, from another side are managers and workers. They are different because shareholders want to provide more profits, and the managers want to make this through HR or human resource sector or area of work. That's why I agree with you about not HR area but financial area is more important for the companies. On another side, how to recognize the period that was your stuff is that it's necessary to start at the beginning. I was at Ukraine for roughly 2 years. I used to work there, and I was friend with the mother. She was the manager of one bank in Promstroy Bank in Zaporozhye. Her daughter started to training gymnastic, athletic gymnastic from 3 years. Her name, that small girl, was then 5 years. And they planned to be the Olympic champion. And she was Olympic champion. She was a leader and the captain of national team of Ukraine. So it's not the rule how to and when to start. And then about whether it's necessary to have only the education, I can use the words of the director of Istanbul University that was said from him 2 weeks ago. The main 3 pillars for development of every country are: the first one, education; the second one, education; and the third one, education. But he explained then that the main natural rule is the law of reproduction. That's why. That's the vision, and in tourism, under my opinion, and in other activities. Thank you. Professor, please.
Well, we have a question. We have 30 seconds time to answer very easily. By this Phobia Julius, we don't know from which country, and he or she says, I wish someone to try and summarily give a quick look on tomorrow leadership expectation and modern life. My colleagues generously delegated me to give this answer in 30 seconds. Well, in my opinion, tomorrow life, basic need is, if you are a leader, if you are a follower, every citizen better develop survival mechanism, which is adaptability and resilience. In terms of the leaders of education, that is the topic, I think just realize that we socially construing professionals that are blind and consider themselves doctor of science, but their science is obsolete, and so often they do damage because they think that they know and they don't. Clearly, if they did know, if the university knew how to create effective professionals and leaders, they would do that, and we wouldn't be having this tragic quagmire. So, what is needed? A revolution, opening the eyes, seeing what we lack, and a new paradigm in education, a new paradigm in leadership. Yesterday and today, the name of the game is we cannot be selfish and thinking that we're gaining. We all lose. This is a ball game that we all lose or we all win. So to be smart is to be stupid. To be generous is to be smart. The best thing I can do if I want to gain a lot is to find in myself and be a leader on that of giving away. And that's the only way to get rich. That's Bogdan teaching.
Thank you very much.